In this episode, we're going to hear from a park ranger who thinks there is some type of weird energy field that is appearing around the Grand Canyon National Park. Then we're off to Savannah, Georgia, where a set of sisters experiences something very strange. Then finally, we end up in the middle of the woods and find out why this group of friends will always read the reviews before booking another Airbnb. Before we get into the stories, I'm very excited to announce the release of dreadsarmy.com, where I release strange and weird news every single day. I also post all of my stories here too. And if you want to be part of the conversation, join the Facebook group, links below. Now let's get into the stories. I'm a park ranger working in the Grand Canyon National Park. I usually end up on daily patrols and bust kids for drinking near the edge of the canyon. Sometimes I write citations and tickets for camping violations and reports about wildlife issues. Once in a while, we'll have a missing persons case. Lately, these cases have been becoming more and more common. Now, the first few missing campers they broadcast on the news. The first one was a girl last May. She was that hippie free spirit type, driving her van all through the states, stopping in all the best campsites and all the best parks all over. She was all by herself and no one even noticed she was gone, till they hadn't seen her posts on her Instagram in a few weeks. Her last calls and texts were to her family on the same day that she last posted. Her phone was turned off for good that same day, and the geotag pinpointed her in the desert. We sent out a search party, over 100 people canvassing the area. It's pretty tough to survive out in the desert. There's no water, no food, and it's scorching hot during the day and cold at night. We found her van parked and nothing seemed abnormal. She had some almonds soaking in a jar to make almond milk or something. She was planning on coming back to that van. It had been a week, so at that point we assumed that we were looking for a body. We didn't find many signs out there in the desert of her at all. The only thing that we found that could have been hers was a little fanny pack with some granola bars in it. Really, we don't even know if that was hers or not. The K9 rescue team seemed to think so. In all, though, it was like she vanished into thin air. Now, a young girl going missing is sad, but it isn't too out of the ordinary. There's bad men out there, and a pretty little thing like that is vulnerable. Plus, there's high rocks and sandstorms and risk of heat exhaustion. If you're traveling without a guide, you're even at bigger risk of trouble. It started to get more odd when more and more people were going missing. A young man from Idaho, traveling with his girlfriend, went to pee behind a rock near Mather Point and never walked back over. There were tons of tourists and hikers nearby. No one saw anything weird, and there weren't any caves or craters around. He just up and vanished. An onlooker had stated they had seen a blue light flash during the situation, but no one else corroborated their story. The news never mentioned this and the papers left it out too. Some people on Facebook suspected the light could have been a rescue flare or a flashlight. I don't think so. The next problem was a family camping out in the trailers. There were a pack of RVers, a husband, a wife, 2 sons about 10 and 12 years old. They'd set out to hike the North Rim and left around 8 a.m. They'd signed the check-in sheets and denied the opportunity to have a local guide with them. By evening, when they hadn't signed out, we sent out a search party. Helicopters and dog teams and tons of volunteers went over the next few weeks. There was nothing coming up. There didn't seem to be any evidence of foul play. There weren't any storms or abnormalities. There weren't any signs of wildlife. No mountain lions anywhere in the area. And they definitely couldn't have taken down a whole family of 4. A husband and wife went missing next. There isn't a ton of information about them, but we think the husband was live streaming right as they went missing. The video footage was scrubbed from the internet, but one of their friends described the clip to me as a witness in our investigation. They told me that the video showed them hiking towards the edge of the canyon, where we think is the Bright Angel trailhead. The wife was walking backwards and laughing, when all of a sudden she disappeared from view. The husband dropped down the phone and gasped. And then a bright blue light overtook the screen. At that point, the video feed ended. We went to check out the site. We didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Of course, we canvassed the area and sent out yet another search crew. But at this point, the entire ranger team were all feeling dejected and like the entire operation was pointless. We'd been staying up long nights on these search teams and hadn't solved a single thing. Well, the story starts to get really interesting when the black vans started rolling in. I don't know if they were FBI, CIA, NSA, or NASA or what. Maybe some program we don't even know about yet. But they are definitely interested in whatever is going on around the canyon. They've set up shop in a big lot with a tall barbed wire fence surrounding the area. There's always those black vans going out all hours of the day and night. They drive all through the park, but I'm not sure they always go back in once they've gone out. Well, I've looked over there with my binoculars some nights. Don't judge me. I've started to see those blue lights flash once in a while. Usually it's through the windows of some warehouse, but they sometimes just appear out of nowhere, right out in the middle of the lot. The lights just pop up for an instant and they're gone. Whatever is going on, I don't want any part of it. I hope those folks are the good guys, and maybe they'll be able to figure out what's going on with those missing people lately. I just hope that they're not the ones causing the issue. Hi, Donovan. I'm not sure who else to tell my story to. Everyone will say I'm crazy, or that my imagination ran away with me. But it was the most chilling thing that I've ever seen, and it shook my belief system to the core. I can no longer say what's possible or impossible. Everyone knows Savannah is reported to be one of America's most haunted cities. I've visited several times, and even stayed in rooms that were supposed to be hotbeds of supernatural activity. But I never saw anything, not even an orb. Savannah's a great place to visit anyway, so I stopped ghost hunting and booked a weekend trip with my sister just to relax. We weren't planning on doing anything spooky. I don't know if you or anyone else hearing this is familiar with Factor's Walk in Savannah. Factor's Walk is a multi-level brick and cobblestone area dividing two streets along the Savannah River. It kind of looks like a back alley behind the waterfront restaurants, but it's a very interesting historical area. Reportedly, there are tunnel systems running all under Savannah, for a whole host of reasons. The tunnels that are now sealed over at Factor's Walk were used mostly for transporting slaves unloading from the ships in secret, away from prying eyes. There are also tunnels under certain restaurants that claim they were used by nefarious sea captains to Shanghai unsuspecting tavern patrons, forcing them into service at sea. So Factor's Walk area, like most of Savannah, is supposed to be haunted. But I'm not done with ghost chasing. So after my sister and I had purchased refreshments from a local cafe, I decided to sit and people watch on a nearby bench while investigating the Kluski Vaults. The Kluski Vaults were built in 1840 and are open to the public to explore. Some people speculate they were once passageways that connected the Kluski Vaults to the rest of the tunnel network. Today, the vaults look like underground storage units, just big, dark rooms built with brick and stone, set in the side of an embankment. My sister walked inside the first one, and I let my gaze wander, thinking about where we should eat dinner. After a few minutes, I looked up and I didn't see her. You can't see all the way inside the vaults from where I was sitting, so I wasn't concerned. Until a few minutes later, when she hadn't reappeared. I watched for a few minutes more, staring at the 4 different entrances, unsure if she had merged and popped out into a different vault to explore. I started to become concerned and stood up, intending to find her. I took a few steps forward and called her name. Suddenly she appeared, standing in the doorway of the same vault I had seen her enter. I walked in her direction and she was staring at me with this bright smile on her face. But her face looked weird, shiny, almost plastic. I was about 25 feet away at the time. She didn't look quite like herself, but it was hard to say what was off. Maybe her eyes, sharp and glittering. They looked a little unmatched, like maybe they were set at slightly different heights from each other. Her grin looked lopsided and fake, and stuck in the same expression. There was something not quite right about her. And she didn't speak, she just stared at me with that weird, unchanging grin. Lynn? I walked closer, frowning. Are you okay? I had gotten about 15 feet away when she abruptly turned and walked back into the vault. I thought maybe it was some kind of joke, like she knew I wasn't into the spooky stuff anymore, and she was planning on popping out and scaring me when I followed her inside. You know, just for laughs. So I stopped right where I was and I called her name. Lynn. I know I sounded impatient. Then I heard it, my sister's voice calling to me. Not from inside the vault, but from behind me. I whirled around and there was Lynn, frowning as she walked towards me. What's going on? She asked. She still had the coffee cup from Cafe M in her hand. I stared at her, totally uncomprehending. Where were you? I asked. The hairs on my arms started to rise, and I felt goosebumps. She pointed to the row of vaults to our right. I checked them all out. I just came out of the last one, and you were standing there calling my name. What's going on? My knees felt weak. What had I seen? It looked like Lynn. No, correction. It looked like something that was trying to look like Lynn, but not quite succeeding. I must have gone pale, because Lynn grabbed my arm and steered me back over to the bench. I kept my eyes fixed on that first vault while I told her what had happened, but nothing ever emerged. She told me then the first vault had felt really uncomfortable to her, and she'd spent less than a minute inside. It felt so claustrophobic and depressing. There was this sense of dark energy in there with me, she said. We both just stared at that first vault, wondering what it had been. What sort of creature could take on the appearance of my sister and step forth into the sunlight? Had it tried to lure me in there? For what purpose? Do you want to go in there and look? Lynn asked me. She sounded scared too. I shook my head, most definitely not. Whatever was in there, trying to escape from that vault on Factor's Walk, was not something I ever wished to encounter again. The craziest thing happened to me a couple of years ago, when my friends and I rented this cabin in the middle of the woods for a couple of nights. We were celebrating a friend's birthday, so we all pitched in and split the cost of an Airbnb. This place was gorgeous, with amazing views all around. There were mountain views as far as the eye could see, and a beautiful creek running right through the property. There was nobody around, just wildlife and beautiful nature. That night we had a nice fire going, and we were just relaxing and laughing. We heard this strange echoing laughter coming from the woods. We all just froze and stayed quiet, listening to hear it again. A while passed and we just kind of brushed it off. Then about a half hour later, we hear the sound again. Creepy, haunting laughter. We decided to investigate. We grabbed some flashlights and headed into the forest. We entered the woods and started looking around with our flashlights. We didn't see or hear anything, so we went deeper into the forest. We stopped again and just listened for a while, but we didn't hear any noise. We were about to head back when a beautiful blonde woman in a long flowered dress walked over to us. She asked who we were, and we told her that we were renting the cabin nearby and heard a strange sound in the woods. She asked what sound we heard, and we told her it was a strange, creepy laugh. The woman told us that she hadn't laughed since her beloved husband was brutally stabbed to death in the middle of the night. None of us knew what to say. I just said, sorry for your loss. She thanked me and invited us to come over to her home and further investigate the strange sound. We agreed and followed her through the woods into her home. We arrived at this pretty little cottage with a garden in the front, and she said that was her house, and she brought us in. We sat down in the living room and she started making us some tea. She asked us how long we had been searching for the source of the sound, and we told her a little over an hour. She said that other people that have rented that Airbnb have claimed to have heard strange sounds coming from the forest, but to her knowledge, nobody ever found anything. I asked her what kind of sounds people heard. She said that people have heard screams, cries, and strange animal sounds, but never laughter. When we asked her if she had ever heard anything, she said there are all kinds of wicked things around here. I asked her why she didn't move. She said that her husband had built the house, and all of her fondest memories were in this house. We sat in the living room talking about all kinds of crazy things until very late. We were all exhausted and figured it was time to head back to the cabin and call it a night. Shortly after we left, we hear the laughter again, this time very loudly. It was as if the laughter was coming from the blonde woman's house. When we looked back, we saw a woman peering through her window at us. It wasn't the same woman. She had gray skin and black hair and black eyes, and an evil, nasty grin. We ran back to the cabin as quickly as we could, and we kept hearing the laughter trail off behind us. We immediately packed up and drove down the road. We stopped at a motel that we passed and spent the night there. The next morning, we got breakfast at a local diner, and we started talking about what had happened. We looked at the reviews on the Airbnb, and several people claimed the house was haunted. Multiple people claimed they heard creepy sounds coming from the forest. A couple even mentioned the blonde woman and how nice and how hospitable she was. One review said evil lurks there and never go there. Another review said a horrible witch demon. My friend had booked a cabin. I have no idea why he didn't read the reviews. This was too much. Multiple people had similar experiences that we just had, and we got to read them all freshly afterwards. There was no denying that the experience we had was unexplainable, but it was relieving to hear that we weren't the only victims. Now when I rent an Airbnb, I make sure I read all of the reviews thoroughly. That is an experience that I never want to have again. Let me know what you think about these stories in the comments below. And also check out Lilith Dread. She releases almost every single day. Thanks and take care.